Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me well? Awesome. Thank you for that, Donna. And yeah, I would really just like to thank Donna Riley, the Jim and Ellen King Dean here at the School of Engineering and the School of Engineering and Douglas Campbell for making this event possible. It's such an honor to be here and to return back to campus. Yesterday, I got to go through another tour of the arts department and arts lab, and it's really cool to see how things have developed there. Yes, so I know we're at the end of the day here, and I really appreciate everyone for showing up. Thank you for that. So, yat e anoswo she e Akilah Martinez yeshe. Hello, everyone. My name is Akilah Martinez, and Bahanlin Dnebekea Nasha. I come from the Bread Springs community on the Navajo Nation, and originally, I started off my artist name as Glittering World Girl, but I've decided to transition that into a full-time business. And with Glittering World Girl, the goal is to create Indigenous-based circular economic ecosystems that cycle off of language and culture revitalization, art, technology, and entrepreneurship. I also offer mentorship to Indigenous-led organizations, entrepreneurs, leaderships, and am a mentor at New Mexico Community Capital. Anyone here familiar with New Mexico Community Capital? No. Yeah, so they're based out of here, out of Albuquerque, and they really bring resources and curriculum in developing businesses to the local entrepreneur Indigenous ecosystem. And currently an Itzanto Idahuila fellow, so that means we are learning from you fellow at Donnett College. And there I'm bringing XR technology to the community and developing an AR project in collaboration with students, bringing in the contemporary art, but incorporating that into emerging technology. And then also there, I've got to develop something I've been very passionate about the last 2 years of my life. I've been able to develop a workshop series called Create a Life You Want, Self-Determination Approach to Donnett-Based Success Consciousness. And this workshop series has had a really monumental impact on students there, just getting a lot of feedback on how the workshop series has improved their daily life and also their professional life. So actually, my lifelong goal to create community-based media started when I was the age of 3. I constantly witnessed my grandparents having to watch TV programming that was only offered in English while they only spoke Denebazad. So at that young age, I kind of really wanted to find modern ways to implement language and culture into modern media. So I graduated from the University of New Mexico through the art program. And when I was pursuing my fine art degree, that's where I really fell in love with electronic art, immersive art, and video production as a way to disseminate language and culture. And then so when I graduated, I actually moved quickly as possible home so I could take care of my grandma between 2014 and 2018. And when my grandma passed away in 2018, I really went on a quest to start honing the skills where I can make a transformative community impact. And I identified that a way to do that was to develop economic opportunity that couples language, culture revitalization, art, technology, and then also entrepreneurship as an avenue to self-determination. So since 2018, I traveled between New York City and Los Angeles, and I learned from leading XR technologists, impact investors, social entrepreneurs, and just found out and to just learn about the whole business approach to, using storytelling with art and technology and building a circular economic system that cycles off of those different points. So what I've concluded there was that a business can be a prototype to the world that you want to live in. And a great example of how business formation coupled with language and culture revitalization can lead to self-determination is the creation of Rama Navajo School Board. So for the Rama Navajo School Board, which my paternal grandpa was a part of, a founding member. He's the one in the middle, Sam Martinez. This was really during the boarding school era, where community-based parents and communities wanted to bring students and their children back home to be able to learn from community-based schools. And after many journeys to Washington, D.C. to ask for funding for the community-based school, and after many rejections from the government to not form the school, the Raymond Navajo School Board actually said, well, we'll just create our own school. So it is said that they're the first Indigenous-led nonprofit organization that was formed to build a school to bring the kids home from boarding schools. And it was actually private funding that enabled them to build the school. Not only were they able to build curriculum that was rich in culture and language, they were also able to employ the local Navajo community to help build the school and to operate the school as well. And this initiative actually led to the Self-Determination Act of 1970, which enabled across the United States other tribal nations to use this same model to build their own schools to bring their kids back from boarding schools, leading to the end of the boarding school era. So that's a really cool example of how Indigenous self-determination can be effective through business creation. And so in the modern day, we saw how the gaming industry can really help also define self-determination for Indigenous communities. And Never Alone was a game developed by the Inupiaq tribe in Alaska, and it was known as the first Indigenous-led game for the modern stuff like PlayStation, Nintendo Switch. And for the Inupiaq, they involved elders. And they involved elders to incorporate language and also parts of their creation story. And this was a way to bring in the younger generation to get really interested in language and culture. But the really cool thing about Never Alone is that it had brought in so much global revenue that it enabled the tribe to have access to funds that are not restricted by federal dollars, meaning that they were able to do what they wanted to, they were able to do what their community needed to do with money that they were having come in. And also, because the game was highly based off of a lot of their traditional stories, that immediately qualified the game to meet a lot of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, innately, advocating for a positive environmental impact. So another cool way to express or to kind of show how finance innovation products are happening in the modern day is actually as a lot of Indigenous people and Indigenous-led organizations are becoming experts in philanthropy and also different forms of access to capital, they're actually starting to build new forms of access to capital known as finance innovation products. And a case study here is Native Women Lead. Anyone here heard of Native Women Lead? Oh, wonderful. Oh, cool. Yeah, so they're actually based out of Albuquerque. And what they have done is that they have totally disregarded the 5 C's of credit when financing businesses. And the 5 C's of credit are character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. And this is the outdated financing model that has really left historically marginalized communities under the ability to have access to capital. But with Native Women Lead, they've developed a new underwriting system called the 5 R's of rematriation, standing for relational, rooted, restorative, regenerative, and revolutionary. These are the categories needed for a business to be financed through their organization. And these types of financing models are based off of relationship-based lending, character-based lending, and they prioritize initiatives that will guarantee a positive community impact. Another really cool example of finance innovation product is Raven Indigenous Capital Partners, and they're based out of Canada. And they're the first Indigenous-owned financial intermediary. And what's really cool about them, I think, is that not only do they prioritize initiatives that push forward Indigenous epistemology, but they also do something called community outcome contracts. And what that means is that the return on investment is really dependent, and the success of an investment is really dependent on how successful a project or an organization was able to positively impact a community. And then we have First Nations Technologies, and they're also based out of Canada. And their mission is to empower Indigenous communities through blockchain, through the creation, to create sovereignty and self-determination through the creation of digital tokens, digital IDs, the creation of new cryptocurrency tokens. And what I think is really interesting about Nations First is that their founder is really passionate about creating a financial system that does not really feed into the Indian Act anymore, which has, you know, the backstory of that is that the Indian Act really enforces that Indigenous communities don't have authority over their resources or their economic statuses or the money that's coming through their nations. With the creation of DAOs, which Nations First specializes in helping communities do, they help Indigenous communities create DAOs, and DAOs stand for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. And with decentralized autonomous organizations, it's all about decentralized leadership, meaning that everyone in the organization has an equal say of where resources are used and how they're used, and also an autonomy with decision-making as well. So that's a really cool structure that could be used to help create liberation in, you know, historically marginalized communities. And these companies realize that technology has the potential to create circular ecosystems that revitalize language and culture, and therefore they really support digital entrepreneurs. So how does all this apply to building an equitable XR industry? Perspective and intention matter. In traditional forms of media, we've witnessed how destructive narratives that surround us in everyday life can be harmful to historically marginalized communities by creating false narratives and stereotypes. Those in power of media during the golden ages of books and also film in North America had the chance to build large amounts of profit from biased history books and also imagery of the dying, defeated Indian in Western films. Media that was really meant to portray racial dominance over Native Americans. And these types of traditional forms of media were also built off of a pyramid-type business model, where only the people on the top of the pyramid really benefit from the media being created. But this is really not the case, I feel like, with the current XR industry. A lot of people who are leaders in the XR industry really advocate for inclusion and economic opportunity, equal economic opportunity within the XR industry. So a lot of those disparities and shortcomings of traditional forms of media, I feel like, don't really exist in XR technology. So during the inception of XR technology, it is often emphasized that it is important that the backbone of these emerging technologies are built off of human-centered design, also community-based initiatives, and that they exercise decentralized leadership, ownership of storytelling, and ownership to manage business operations the way they see fit. And I feel like this is all really possible in the XR industry. So an example of how the XR industry is coupling with building economic opportunity is ResiDAO. And ResiDAO, I'm a co-founder of ResiDAO, and it's a decentralized autonomous organization located here in New Mexico with a few Indigenous entrepreneurs. And with ResiDAO, we really practice the decentralized leadership, and we leave leadership on kind of like a voting base where everyone kind of has an equal vote in what the organization will do next. And with ResiDAO, we're implementing AR into the structure of how ResiDAO will bring in potential other partners. So the way we are implementing the use of augmented reality is that we are building an onboarding process that uses augmented reality, which helps entrepreneurs go through a visioning journey where they can really connect with their purpose and to discover new ways that they can create positive community impact through their own entrepreneurial journey. So another really cool example of how XR technology is implementing new types of business models and new types of economic structures is Crux, and they are built off of a cooperative model, and also they really prioritize high value proposition when paying their creators. And also they really centralize ownership of storytelling as well. So in conclusion, the creation of social enterprise and through the groundwork of evidence of success of the companies that I had just talked about above, I think it really proves that XR technology is a technology for social good and can be used as a liberatory mechanism to create sustainable and reimagine new business models while giving people the opportunity to tell their own stories. So on my personal journey, earlier this year in June, I got to attend the Augmented World Expo in Long Beach, and I got to meet Tom Furness there. And Tom Furness was giving a very emotional keynote speech. And so a little bit about Tom Furness's background is that he's one of the founding fathers of VR. He's one of the first inventors to create the VR headsets. And he was delivering a keynote speech at AWE, and he really pushed people to explore who they are when they're not being immersed in technology. He really wanted to question if people are caring for others more. Do we practice love on a daily basis? And he really was pleading and advocating for people who use VR and XR technology to use this as a technology to uplift humanity. His speech really moved me, and I approached him afterwards and we talked, and I got to learn a little bit more about him, and I told him a little bit about my story. And this actually led to an awesome partnership between Virtual World Society. Oh, I forgot to mention, he's the founder of Virtual World Society. This led to a partnership between Virtual World Society and Glittering World Girl. So that was really exciting. So right now, and I guess I should have stated this earlier in the presentation, but who here is all familiar with XR technology? Okay, so XR technology, that's like an umbrella term for the emerging technologies of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. So it means all of those different types of media forms, but I wanted to take you guys through a couple examples of augmented reality, which we have one already on display right here. So with augmented reality, what that is that it layers digital content onto the real world. And this type of AR is surface image tracking. So it will detect a surface and then it'll load the digital content on top of that surface. And so in this journey, I've learned how to build 3D models. And so you can kind of go through here as if it was an object in the physical space. And this was just kind of like a piece that I got inspired to connect with Cherokee Apache land because I'm part Cherokee, and the Cherokee Apache predominantly lived in Arizona. So it was really fun to create these 3D models. So as I'm learning to develop these projects, there are a lot of learning curves and really defining new use cases for this in reference to language and culture revitalization. So that's my own personal journey that I'll be going on, probably within the next year. But yeah, like learning how to build 3D models has been really fun. I use Blender 3D. And then let me go ahead and load up the next project. Are there any questions right now while I load this project? Yep.
When you talk about language revitalization,
Yep.
how would that be incorporated into your projects?
Yeah, so
And a related one might be the RAMA community schools that may not be called exactly that, but again, to what extent have they incorporated native language into the curriculum? Because I know sometimes people are, I think that in some groups it's sort of, they feel it's better left to the home situation or to the community as opposed to the public school, but this is a little different.
Yeah.
From public schools anyway.
Yeah, those are really good questions. So actually my my paternal grandfather, the one that was on the screen, he had developed a whole library that included like language and books for content, right? But unfortunately, the library was burned to the ground by Christian missionaries. So I think with the efforts of that, one really cool thing that flourished from that initiative was REMA was able to also develop a radio station with that in hand with that same initiative. And that radio station is still broadcasted today, and they broadcast information in Navajo. So that's really cool. There are other community-based schools, immersion schools on the reservation where they teach curriculum in Navajo as well. So yeah. So let me go ahead and then to answer your next question, I think this next project display could kind of answer that. Then my next slides. So let me share. There we go. Okay. So this is another surface tracking experience, and this one is called DigiNumX. This was the first AR project that I created. And this is the one that was funded by the Fulcrum Fund. So right now we have 3D objects loading into the environment. So DigiNumX incorporates 3D models of food that can be found in New Mexico that had a strong indigenous influence, but also it incorporates 7 languages that can be found in New Mexico, 6 of which are indigenous languages. So that includes Caries, Zuni, Walatoa Jemez, Comanche, Nahuatl, Navajo, and Spanish. So, and it's, can you guys hear that? Okay. So I wanted to just, create something very playful and joyful. I feel like with a lot of issues that Native communities deal with, there can be development of anxiety and depression. So a lot of the times in my work, I like to create joyful type of content. And this is a project-based 8-bit melody as well. And then over here, we have the different language speakers. And then over here, the organizations that help fund this project. And then oh. And I'm a little bit short on hands here because I have to hold the mic up, but or let me see here. Okay. So what you can do here is you can move around the 3D models in the space as well. You can make them bigger and rotate them. You can make them smaller. And there's a really big, oh, there it is. There's this one is rotating on its own over here, but you can make that really big in the environment as well. So yeah, like I had mentioned, my next kind of journey is to explore the use cases of these technologies. Let's see here. And I'll go ahead and pop up this experience. So sometimes, or a lot of the times, because there's a lot of content in these experiences, it will take a while to load. So I'll just go ahead and put that right there for a while we continue on. Okay, cool. So this might help answer your question further. So right now, as mentioned in the bio, I'm a recipient of the Niantic Studio Developer Accelerator Fund, and that's the same company that developed Pokemon Go. And they recently came out with new technology called VPS, visual positioning. And what that does is that it enables 3D models like this to be strongly anchored to a physical space based off of scanning. So with that, you can do centimeter precision anchoring onto a physical space. And I feel like that would be really beneficial for me because although this is kind of anchored onto one space, we'll see that it kind of like slides around as well. So the visual positioning anchoring with VPS, I feel like would really help build a digital playground, which is my project that I'll be working on through the Accelerator Fund. I'll be developing like a digital playground that has 3D models of animals that kind of serve as a bank where knowledge can be sought. And yeah, so it'll kind of have interactivity as well. So once the player maybe learns something from there, an interactive component will be initiated and help the viewer or user feel like they're being celebrated or something like that. It kind of just like really gamify Indigenous language and culture revitalization. So that's this part right here, the Niantic Studio Developer Accelerator Fund. And then also a week and a half ago, I got to attend Immerse the Bay at Stanford University. And after some networking, I was able to join a team. And within 36 hours, we developed Immersive Ink. And Immersive Ink is pretty much an immersive audiobook, which uses XR technology and AI to use AI as a way to identify text and characters on a page, which would then, in this case, we used nouns. And when it detects nouns, it runs the language learning model GPT to an AI 3D generator called Meshi. And Meshi then develops 3D models, and it really just layers digital 3D models on top of a visual component, in this case, a book. So we found that this could be a really cool use case for education and making education more accessible in maybe for people who like, you know, have a hard time learning, who have like ADHD or something like that. This could be a really cool use case for them. But then also, I think that since a lot of Indigenous languages are orally structured, I think that this type of immersive audiobook would be a really good tool for Native American schools to incorporate for developing audiobooks as well. So that's also my next mission, is to use these spectacles. So this is developed in Snapchat's new AR glasses called Spectacles. And to use spectacles and to maybe get a few of them, because we did win their track, I do have access to getting the spectacles now. So to get a few of them and then to start bringing them into classrooms, that's my next journey for the next year. So how did I get here? We just kind of went through a lot. And I feel like what was covered here, I really did a lot of that stuff just in a matter of a few years. And I feel like a lot of that had to deal with rewiring the brain for success. And what that means is that I really started to become fascinated with how humans can develop their own form of human potential, the highest forms of human potential. And I feel like entrepreneurship can be a spiritual journey in tandem with that, which would allow us to connect with the infinite potential that lives within us. I say spiritual journey because along the path of becoming a successful entrepreneur, we can connect with our innate states of being to bring fruition into our life and to bring into fruition our natural birthright to abundance. For Navajo people, our deities are said to have given us states of being, which include joy, happiness, confidence, and peace. Those are our natural states of being. There's a lot of ancient text that mirrors what quantum physics and neuroscience is now proving, and I've come to connect the dots between those points of modern scientific interpretations to the Navajo way of life and thought processes. The Navajo people understood this phenomenon and recognized the existence of a conscious and subconscious mind. So here I have a really simple diagram of the conscious mind known as Binik-e and the subconscious mind known as Dot Binik-e. And then also the acknowledgement that we're also connected to something bigger than us, which is known as the super subconscious mind or universal intelligence or Diendene. And here, with finding, just really understanding how our mind works and how our mind works and how our mind is wired to basically enable us to become goal-achieving beings, right? So a lot of people here is familiar with the conscious and subconscious mind. Yeah, about a little bit under half. Okay. What was that?
I said explain.
Yeah, so the conscious mind is what we're all aware of right now when we are awake, right? This is logical thinking. We have the willpower. We make decisions in our daily life. Short-term memory is also here within our conscious mind, and it works when we are awake. We have critical thinking here, and we have the 5 senses that we are aware of in our conscious mind, which is hear, smell, taste, touch, and sight. With the subconscious mind, I came across a Navajo teaching that with the conscious mind, we are aware of these 5 parts, the hear, smell, taste, touch, sight. But it is said that with the subconscious mind, those are these invisible parts of our hands. And a lot of the time in modern society, a lot of people don't really connect with this anymore, the invisible parts. And I believe that that could be intuition, telepathy, let's see, so we would have intuition, telepathy, long-term memory, and also our emotions and stuff like that, like the unseen things that we operate off of. So here in the subconscious mind, there lies, it's kind of like the larger part of the iceberg. And that's where our beliefs, long-term memory, it's also a protective mechanism, and that's where we have the ability to imagine things. That's where our habits are formed as well. And it controls all our systems in the body, like when we sleep as well. And that's where we have our programming, our beliefs are in there. The emotions and our values, intuition, fears, and the self-image are all in the subconscious mind. So with the subconscious mind, like that is the part I feel like can really directly connect with the super subconscious mind, aka universal intelligence. And a lot of the great inventors of the world believed that the super subconscious mind, that's where invention lives, that's where creation lives, bringing in new realities live, is that part of ourselves. So returning to our divine, infinite, limitless selves, as who we came into this world as representations, immediate innate representations of abundance, joy, happiness, confidence, and peace, the repetition of this awareness will result in transformation by the renewing of the mind. We would be able to develop thought patterns that will lead us to creating a life that we really want. On a physical level, proven by science, when you go through this process, you're really rewiring the default mode network, aka the self-image, which is right there in the subconscious mind. And you'll also be developing new neural pathways and initiating the reticular activating system to bring desirable circumstances into our life. And when we align this with goal creation, bringing our goals into fruition. So this entails rewiring the subconscious mind by being aware of our thoughts in our conscious mind while we're awake. Is what we are thinking when we are awake in harmony? Is what we are thinking when we are awake in harmony with our goals? The subconscious mind then pushes our predominant thoughts into the super subconscious mind, aka infinite intelligence, into the unseen power, and or into energy. The super conscious mind is where telepathy, remote viewing, creation, and invention lives. So getting all these parts of our being in alignment with our goal is what I give credit to in my own personal successes that seem to just be the starting in the creation of Indigenous-based circular economic ecosystems, meaning that different forms of value all work together to sustain personal life, family life, and community, with mutually benefiting activities always happening, and having these kind of systems set in place during goal creation for business. So while I've been at Dina College during the Nitsando Idahwila Fellowship, this is the workshop series that I've created this information off of, really paralleling quantum physics, neuroscience, and Navajo way of thinking. And with Navajo way of thinking, this is a very popular module that we use, and it can be applied to anything in your life. In this case, I've built it in reference to what I'm talking about here in the power of creation and creating a life that you really want. But this module will always have these 4 anchoring ideas of Nisaha case, meaning thinking, Nahat, which means planning, Ina, which means life and or being, embodying, and Sehasin, faith. It's also interpreted as hope. So what I've really come to find is this fascinating discovery that Navajo way of life is really built off of achievement. It's really built off of success. It's built to create success and accomplishment and goal creation and bringing in ideas into life. And this is what this is built off of here. So here under Nisaha case, I put thinking into harmony, believing in yourself, imagination, thinking big, and intuition. This is Nisaha case means thinking, so it's all about thinking. Maybe you're thinking you want to create something in your life. So then you go on to the next phase, nahatat, which means planning. And that's where you start to also discover yourself, and you just start to discover your own power within. And you're able to really create a goal. And you're finding beauty within, finding the infinite value within, and you have the will to do so. That kind of all happens in the planning stage. And then in ina, which means life, this is where you really start to live these concepts. You start to embody it, and you start to nurture this thought process. And that's where the repetition of new thoughts, that's where you're practicing this on a daily basis. You have a mastermind, maybe you connect with people who are kind of very goal-oriented, or maybe you have a mentor that will help you go to the next part of your life. Emotional intelligence, which is where we're able to balance and regulate our energy, the energy that we're putting out into the universe. And this is where you're practicing your new ideal self-image, practicing self-love and self-care. This is all about the part where you're doing this, you're implementing this into your life. And then the faith, sihasin, I feel like this is the part that's really connected to the infinite intelligence, the super subconscious mind, the unseen powers. This is where you're able to really just practice gratitude, love, peace, and prosperity. And I'm sure a lot of us have heard about the power of now, right? Yep, that's where you're practicing a lot of that right here. So that's kind of like what I'm doing right now. It's something I'm very passionate about and have been developing at Dana College. And like I said earlier, the workshop series has been getting an overwhelming interest on the reservation. I feel like this is a way that we can really heal our epigenetics, heal generational trauma, and just move forward with self-empowerment as well, self-determination. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm up to. And the students there, like I said, they really see a change in their personal life and in their professional life as well. So it's been a really rewarding journey. That's that. Thank you.
Right, should we move to questions?
Right on time.
Folks have questions? I have one about using a phone versus other kinds of tools. Tell us about, the convenience of using a phone versus other tools you might use.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I like augmented reality because for me, when I put on the VR headsets, which kind of blocks off, everything, and it's all digital content, it's a virtual environment. For me personally, I find that it's easy for me to get disoriented in those. Like I have to hold on to a rail if I'm walking, With AR, I like it because it layers digital content on top of real world objects or environment. It might just be a personal choice, but then also I feel like AR is more accessible to people like on the reservation as well. But I am so psyched out about the spectacles that Snapchat had developed. They're so cool. Like, I wish I had one right now to show you guys. But yeah, I think that it just really is it's like personal preference when it comes down to VR and AR. Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could expound on something you said in terms of the organization, I guess, of the company or companies, that it's more egalitarian than is typical of businesses, which have more of a pyramidal structure, where the CEOs and the people at the top are going to get much, much more income than those at the bottom. So I was wondering, and also, how this is realized, but also it seems that the people involved in these businesses are probably highly educated, but that may not be true of the general community, also in terms of socioeconomic status. So how does this filter down, if at all, or help the community in terms of sustaining a positive lifestyle?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's all kinds of new developments on new economic structures. Like, has anyone heard about bioregional economies. Yeah, bioregional economies. So that includes environment as well. And it's more about a specific region and the people who are occupying that region. So in bioregional economies, every part of a culture is included. Also, every part of like what makes a community is included. In those bioregional economies, also Indigenous voices are really valued because, you know, the people who are from that region already know how to take care of the land. With those circular economic ecosystem structures, it's really based off of also kinship, which is a huge part. It's a huge concept in circular economies, kinship, community. Implementing the use of people, maybe they're artists, maybe they are food providers. Everyone is considered in that, and learning how to do reciprocity where you're able to, you know, give to them and they give back to you as well. It's like a mutually benefiting activity is always happening in that kind of structure.
All right, so let's give Akilah one more round of applause.